Yeah, that was a pro-Palestinian rally in Chicago yesterday, and you saw the speaker from the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. When he told the crowd Iran had attacked Israel, they applauded and cheered. So what do we make of this here at home, those who support Iran's attack? And will we see more support for the radical Islamic terrorists of Tehran? Ken Marcus is with us, founder and chairman of the Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under the Law. Ken, what do you make of these type of videos? Another group, when that was announced, the room of activists started chanting, "Hands off Iran." What's your reaction when you see this?
Good to be with you, Eric. I think that this is very important to think about because these are the moments when the anti-Israel activists give up the game. Sometimes people are lulled into thinking that these are peace activists or human rights activists. But the fact is that they are gleeful about an escalation of war, an attack on the Jewish state. Peace activists don't praise escalations of war. Human rights activists don't support attacks on civilian populations. When you think about the timing, this reminds me of October 7th, when anti-Israel activists began protesting Israel on and off college campuses, even before the Israeli Defense Forces swung into action. That's because they are not opposing Israel's military. They are not really addressing human rights. They are praising any attack on the Jewish people. That's why I would say that what we're seeing when it comes to the organized anti-Zionist movement cannot be understood as anything other than an organized hate group or anti-Semitism organization.
You know, one can understand support for the Palestinian cause and for the Palestinian people for a two-state solution. But in this case, it seems to go so far beyond that. Do you think the reporting calling some of these demonstrations here in the U.S. pro-Palestinian rallies, pro-Palestinian demonstrations, do you think that is appropriate and or correct reporting, or should they, in some cases, be called pro-Hamas or pro-Iran or pro-radical Islamic terrorist killing protests, and when they're calling for wiping out Israel?
If these groups were truly pro-Palestinian, they would want to support things that help the Palestinian people, not just actions that attack the state of Israel. Earlier this afternoon, I was walking through a college campus in the Midwest, and I saw a protest activity happening in which students were urged to have a moment of silence for, quote unquote, the martyrs of October 7th. They were being led by someone with a beard grayer than mine. He appeared to be a professor. They were not being asked for a moment of silence for the victims of October 7th, not for the Israelis who were murdered, not for the women who were raped, not for the people who were tortured, not for the hostages who are still being held all of these months later, but rather for the perpetrators, some of whom died in action. This is the people for whom they are giving praise and memory. This is not pro-Palestinian. This is pro-hate.
Why do they do this? What is behind that?
I really don't think that what is happening now can be understood in terms either of a response to a particular Israeli action with respect to Gaza, nor even with respect to Israel's history of defending itself and taking various actions with respect to the Palestinians. What we're seeing is the resurgence of an age-old hatred, which is showing its ugly face anytime one sees the Jewish state or the Jewish people entering the news in a prominent way. This is something that I've seen to some extent over the last 20 years, which is the following. Anytime Jews are attacked, including attacks on the state of Israel, there is a gleeful response and usually an uptick on anti-Semitism on college campuses. And it's important to think about it because it is so counterintuitive. It's not just when Israel takes some sort of military action to protect its people. It's when there is an attack on Israel. So that's why I would say that what's been happening over the last several hours really gives us a moment of insight or clarity that what we're seeing now is not protest against Israeli actions, but really an explosion of hate that is triggered by attacks on the Jewish state.
And sadly, we will likely see more pro-Iranian protests in the coming weeks. Ken Marcus of the Brandeis Center for Human Rights. Ken, thank you for joining us this afternoon.